If anybody wants to introduce themselves, now would be a good time. I'll start. My name is Spade
Sure.
Robinson. I'm a story consultant. You guys know most things about me if you follow me on TikTok. I'm also a screenwriter, but my passion is helping writers get to the most compelling version of their story, whatever it is. So I'm here to facilitate. I have no authority here. I'm a peer. And I just create the space for this to happen. Derek?
Yes. So my name is Derek. I'm based in New York City. I'm an aspiring filmmaker. I would say during the pandemic, I really took some time to kind of find my creative voice. But I'm not getting any younger. So I'm like, hey, look, it's either now or never. So I'm really trying to give this a real shot. And I'm hoping to make some genuine connections and get some honest feedback and just kind of see where things go from there.
Beautiful. Nice to meet you. I'm glad you're here.
Hi, I'm Reese, short for Sharice, but people I know just call me Reese. Um, I am sort of on my third and fourth act, so to speak. I spent 20 years in an airline. I retired about 10 years ago. So I have flight benefits for life. I still get excited over that. I can't even believe it. I am nomadic right now. I was in Atlanta for about 30 years. I am back in my birth city, which I hate, for a family member. And this is like, I do a lot of VA work. I do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of VA work. I've written some travel stuff, but after the pandemic, all that kind of went away. I did some ghost writing for travel, just 1,600 words of whatever. I have a couple of things published under my name, but that was like 8 or 9 years ago. And ghost writing was just better because I didn't have to cultivate my own audience. Uh, I'm in Philly right now, and I've had meetings on a script that I did a few years ago, but none of that makes any difference until like you're actually filming and it's on TV or on the movies. So I'm just trying to get to a point where I can get something sold. Um, I don't think I have a preference of like uh I do have some preferences of like genre, but uh, I've written like film and TV because I like both because I love both. Um, Mostly just like I do like sci-fi, sad dramas, mostly like dark dramas or like comedy dramas, like that sort of thing, or dark comedies really. Um, that's about it. That's me.
Welcome, Reese. I'm glad you're here.
Hi
Are we good?
everyone.
Oh, I know. Okay.
I'm Darnell. I am Canadian. I'm from Ontario, Canadian Jamaican. And prior to this, my background was in content marketing, digital marketing, every other form of writing. That's what I went to school for as well. I work for the federal government now, and you know, my desire for to screenwrite and my love of filmmaking kind of just kept coming up. And I was like running from it, but a good friend of mine actually created a production company that he made a short film, won a huge grant from our government, and made a production company. And so I've been working with his company, and opportunities have been coming up, and so um, I'm trying to take them and prepare myself. You don't got to get ready if you stay ready. So I'm really trying to hone my craft and build a community that can help me do that. I do agree with you in terms of the globalization aspect, especially for me because I am multilingual and I do want to work in industries in different countries and in different languages as well. So, to touch on Reese's point, I love dramedies. That's my sweet spot. Currently focusing heavily on comedy and then moving over to drama. So I'm writing a lot of sketches. I do have a plan to I'm trying to write a certain amount of sketches this year, a pilot, maybe two specs, one of each, like a comedy and a drama. And I'm trying to crank out a short film for that company that I mentioned. So really appreciative that I found you on TikTok and hoping to attend every weekend that I can to as a form of accountability. Yeah.
Amen. Okay. So if anybody's watching and they want to work with you, what are the languages that you speak?
I speak English is my first language. I speak French, Spanish. I'm currently learning German and Swahili. So I'd say I speak three fluently, and then I'm in like a year or two, I'll be able to confidently say I speak the other two. So yeah.
Okay. So the next 20 minutes we're gonna jump in and then we'll take a break after that. Anybody having a snag?
Not really a snack. I think for me, because I grew up like reading a lot of books. I'm a very descriptive person, you know. I have a hard time sometimes with a lot of action lines and scripts because a lot of times they're very direct and less descriptive as I would like them to be.
Mm.
So I think for me, trying to kind of balance between telling a very descriptive story that anyone reading it can follow along and be engaged and excited about, while still, I guess, following industry standard, you know. So that's kind of been what I've been working through. But I think I'm making some gains in that area.
Okay. One rule of thumb that I like to think of is closing my eyes and picturing what I read, what I'm writing. Because
Mhm.
the main thing, I mean, you know this already, right? The main thing is that film is nothing but sight and sound.
Yes.
So, when I close my eyes and I picture the scene and picture what I can see and hear, usually it helps me to edit out maybe some of the other things that I feel display my voice as a writer or help give me insight into a character, but will never end up on camera.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't know if that'll be helpful for you, but it's usually helpful for me.
Oh, that definitely was helpful. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Darnell, how's it going over there?
It's going well. The first session I was just using as a brainstorming session, and I'm wondering, um, do you have a process for like brainstorming compelling ideas, story ideas
From scratch or taking the thing from scratch to trying to develop it?
from scratch?
Um, Whenever I'm creating something from scratch, I usually try and start with theme. So, obviously, when a story is developed, there's like the plot, what it's about, and then there's like what the writer wants to say, what it's really about. I try to think about what it's really about, what I want to say. From my perspective, most writers, almost everything they write, if not everything they write, especially if they haven't been commissioned to write it, comes from questions they still have about the human experience. So either something that they don't understand about the world we live in, or don't understand about the experience of being a human being. Most of us are grappling with something, and that's what we end up writing about, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. I don't understand why addiction functions the way it does. I don't understand why matters of the heart are like this. I do not understand. And so we write about it in an attempt to understand. And if we are making a list of some of those things that we're grappling with in terms of um, a lack of being able to really grasp this concept about the human experience, I think you'll find not only is it something that you're deeply interested in, and something that you can really sink your teeth into because of the curiosity factor, but also something that's probably universal and something that a lot of people are able to sink their teeth into as well.
That makes sense. Thank you.
That's good
Yeah,
to
you're
know.
welcome.
I don't think I thought about it that way because like I've had ideas. I'm sure you all have. Like you'll think of something as this idea like you've had like your entire life, like a bunch of ideas. And then sometimes I feel like I would start writing and I would say this is not a TV show, it's a film. And then I get more into it and I realize, you know what, this is not supposed to be funny. It's a straight drama. Um, so I don't think I've ever thought about trying to come up with the theme first. That's good.
Yeah, and they all live, inside of us. So one thing is like, I think a lot of us have brilliant ideas all day long,
Yes.
but our life isn't organized like that. We have like these little chunks of time where we can be creative, right? And so if you have an ongoing list, whether it's in your phone or whether you do analog or by your bed or in the bathroom or wherever, I think that'll help us capture some of those ideas that are genius that are so fleeting because our lives are so busy. And I think we can sometimes grow something big out of these like little realizations we have all the time.
Mhm.
You know, what's worked for me sometimes is, well, most of the time is I usually start with, like you said, I usually put whatever theme or whatever I'm feeling in like a diagram, and whatever comes to mind from that one. So let's put addiction, right? I put addiction in the middle, and whatever speaks to me from that, I usually write all those things down, because I'm one of the people that have a lot of ideas all day long and I have a hard time like reining them in. So I kind of just write them all, put everything on the paper, leave it alone, come back to it maybe the next day when I'm not as creative, and start like being more methodical about it. And usually that helps me find really good themes, and I usually am able to like take those and create entire pieces from it.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, our lives aren't really built
Yeah.
to be creative, unfortunately. Okay. So the next 20 minutes we're gonna jump in and then we'll take a break after that. How did
Good.
that go for everybody?
That was more productive for me than the first 20 minutes. I'm actually happy
Mm-hmm.
it went over time. I put on some music and just and started writing.
Okay.
I actually worked through something from a different script that I
Okay.
have, something that has been nagging me, like I knew something wasn't adding up and I just remembered it. So I was able to jot it down so I can go back to it, when I write a little bit more of that. And then I worked through one of the paragraphs I was stuck with. So yeah.
That happens a lot whenever I'm like focused on one thing. I'm somehow, every other problem is solvable. But I'm glad you didn't pivot over and start writing that script because that is the deception of getting a great idea when you're working on something else.
Derek said something earlier that I love. He was like, he always jots down stuff. I think as writers, we all do. Like back in the day, it was like whatever, if I was at a restaurant, it would be a napkin or whatever piece of paper I had on me. And now, we have our phones and the notes app is like, I mean, it's horrible with ADD, but it's like the best thing ever when
Hmm.
you and you're like, okay, don't forget. So I have like these little, don't forget, and then a category, and then I'll write it down so I can always go back to it and search pretty easily. But that's,
A
yeah.
collection of things. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so what is happening with you guys in terms of the thing that you're working on right now or writing today? Do you guys have any little moments of writer's block or pause or anything like that? Or are there any sort of career building things that you're trying to figure out?
I think I have both. So with the script that I'm writing, it's gone through so many iterations. I've been writing it forever. I don't even want to tell you how long because I wasn't pursuing writing as a career for a long time. But this one of the things that I do that helps me figure out a scene or characters is I'll write either like a history or like a blog post. No one ever sees it, but it's like for me where I
Mhm.
can like sort of, it's not quite brainstorming, it's a little bit more um methodical than just brainstorming, but it
Mhm.
really helps me to like figure out a scene because I feel like my transitions, like I'm always so stuck. Like I know I've read all the books. Like I know like what a script is supposed to be. I know acts 1 through 3 or 1 through 5, and I know like the arcs, but it's tying in those transitions and sometimes putting in those um foreshadowing or like Easter eggs to make it make sense. It's sometimes where I struggle the most because that's the technical part. It's the creative part I've got, which is crazy because I was an IT project manager for like over 20 years. So I'm very, logical and methodical, except when it comes to my creative writing.
Well,
I'm
you know what? Okay, so here's the thing. I think that there's this misconception between the art and math of screenwriting, and a lot of us think of it as an art form, and it technically is. But to your point, it really is more math than I think we give it credit for. So I think the way that your brain works is perfect for screenwriting. It's just a matter of figuring out what kind of tools you're gonna. I do this all the time. My students see me do this. So, um,
pull
I
out
see
your
my students
backpack.
do this and I'm like, right, but what kind of tools are you gonna pull out of your backpack? Right?
Mhm.
So, for example, if moving from one scene to another, I think that's what you mean when you say transitions. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Or like how when I'm tying everything in. So, because I always start from the end. Like this is a story I want to tell, and this
Mhm.
is where they could be. And I usually kind of work backwards. I mean, I do a whole like
Oh no. I think we lost her.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully she'll log back in. But does anybody else have any thoughts or anything that they're sort of bumping up against either in the script or just in career development?
I think for me, because I'm so new at trying to pursue this professionally, I think I have a lot of anxiety about like where to go. Like I'm reading about like contests and fellowships and all this stuff. And a lot of it just honestly seems like performative, sort of, and in the sense that, like, you know, you're submitting something to a contest, you're going up against tons of people who, you know, might have better scripts or might not than you know. And because you're not in those rooms, you don't know what those conversations are. You don't know how they're perceiving stuff. I think for me, I'm just kind of trying to figure out what the best route is and just making sure that I'm, you know, exposing myself enough and doing it in a way that makes sense, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Okay, so my superpower is that I am in those rooms. So I do know those conversations because I have them all the time. I think there are a lot of ways that we convolute or sort of put all in one category: fellowships, contests, labs, mentorships, and all of those things. But they all function so differently, and they all have different programming and do different things for our careers. So what I always advise is that people or writers understand what they need in their career right now. So a fellowship might not be it, and a contest may not be it, especially for emerging writers. Like, there's no reason for emerging writers to be applying to Blue Cat and um Nichols or whatever. And it's not that emerging writers can't win those. It's just when you're still developing your writing voice and all of that, and all of those contests um are based on that kind of thing, then what you are looking for is more of I would say I wouldn't even say mentorships. I would say more fellowships and more lab environments are better. And there are different types of labs. So there are some labs that are more career building, and then there are some labs that are more creative building. So the best thing I think to do is looking at opportunities and figuring out what their programming is. So on the website, they'll say, in this program, you'll do blah, 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 blah. And then you'll figure out, okay, is that what I need right now? So if you apply to a program and it's like, you go through this program, it is a situation where we link you up with an executive at our studio and then you work on your script. Okay, so in those kind of programs, the point is to sell your script to that studio. So off the bat, they're only choosing writers that write in the voice of things that they program for their mandate. So if I'm reading, let's say, scripts for Fox or Paramount or whoever, then I'm looking at what are the shows that play on Fox, and do I write in that voice? And if I don't write in that voice, there's no reason to apply to that one. But if I do, then I understand that it's not to necessarily um get my own show made, or it's not necessarily to move my career forward in a way of thinking of like, I want to get staffed on a show. It's more Fox is trying to figure out, are you going to be a writer who's going to create IP that we can buy sort of at a premium situation, low cost, because you're an emerging writer.
Yeah.
Like, there's no shortage of people they can pick up the phone and call. But if they say I can get diverse writers or emerging writers at a much lower cost, I want to find that who's going to be able to, I can put through this pipeline of this studio.
Right.
So earlier in your career, I would say the things that help the most are things like workshops and labs, because
Right.
all of those are meant to build up your chops as a writer and more specifically help you define your voice. So in the rooms where we're talking about who's going to be a part of this cohort and who's going to move forward to the next level, semifinalists, finalists, or whatever, it has everything to do with Reese's back. It has everything to do with every single time this writer has a distinctive voice. That
Okay.
is above it. You don't like that is even above having proper formatting, which I don't advise, but um having a distinctive voice is above everything else. And then a compelling story, and then formatting and professionalism and everything else.
Gotcha.
So knowing
Okay.
that that's the order, I would say I would be doing programs that are going to lead me to that priority list.
Okay.
And in terms of what you do next in your career, is it the kind of, should I be applying to this and that, or should I be spending more time networking, or should I be spending more time looking for jobs that are entry level where I can move up in? It has more to do with what you want your career to look like. Do you want to be staffed on a television show? Do you want to be hired to write features? Do you want like what kind of career do you want to have? Because where writers end up doing quite a few of those things, um, the way to get to them is different. And the most important thing is understanding how writers get hired. Because
Gotcha.
then you can reverse engineer what your tactic is to position yourself to be hired as a writer.
Gotcha.
Unless you want to do it independently, which is another thing, which we can talk about if you're interested in that. But if you don't, then I would look at where I would follow the money, right? So if you want to write for television, I would be like, oh, who gets the budget to hire staff writers? That's the showrunner. Okay. So then how do I meet showrunners? Oh, okay. So then I usually meet showrunners by being either support staff in a writer's room or the sort of contest. Most of the way you'll meet them is by your agent or manager will set up meetings for you. Okay, so I'm not repped. Well, then how do I get repped? Then we go back to the fellowships and stuff like that. So following the money is really helpful.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Anybody else? No?
Yes, I did want to ask. So I guess I'm in the same, well, maybe not. I would say let's look at this as like school, and I'm in the first year of really trying to develop my portfolio. And I'm wondering, if at all, do you have a set amount of projects that you give yourself to work on um each year or like quarter or what have you? And if so, how much time do you give yourself to work on each before moving on to the next to ensure that you meet that timeline? Because I know that you always like need to be writing, right? So
You do always need to be writing, but I don't think for the purpose of always churning out a new sample. I know that's a little bit controversial. Um, I think if you have 4 strong samples, I think that's enough to get you where you're going. Now, you should always be writing. So, because samples become outdated, like the world changes, attitudes change, certain trends change, stuff like that. So, you should always be, but like 4 ready to go samples, I think is strong.
Mhm.
I would like over the course of a year, if I've written 2 strong samples and developed them well, I think I would feel like I'm in a good place. The most important thing I think is not having like a lot of samples. The most important thing is having extremely well developed samples. So if I spend a whole year writing a pilot and it's amazing, I think that's a really great year as opposed to having 3 pilots that I think are pretty good. Um, my knee-jerk reaction for you is that simultaneously, especially if you have 2 samples that are really, really, really good,
Mhm.
my next thing for you would be trying to move your career forward as opposed to trying to write a bunch of more samples. Like I would be trying to figure out, is this a time for you to get repped? Depending on where you want to go,
Mhm.
I would be focusing on broadening my network and making sure that my relationships are as strong as my work. Because if you have amazing work, but then your relationships aren't strong, then there's not an audience to catch it and move your career forward.
Okay. So I would say this year I'm trying to develop, like, let's say 2 strong samples. And my ultimate goal is to be in a writer's room, a television writer, producer. So yeah, I guess what you're saying is focus on the samples and then focus on the networking, and then like you had mentioned to Derek, just like follow the money.
Yes. So if you know you want to work in a writer's room and
Mhm.
you already have 2 strong samples, then I would be sending out those samples.
Okay.
And I would be applying to screenwriting contests as opposed to like the more fellowshipy, mentorshipy ones. Depending on the type of mentorship. So okay, so
What if I'm looking to develop my voice?
You said what?
What if I'm looking to develop my voice?
Oh yeah, then I would be looking at more of the development ones, like the fellowships that are more craft driven and ones that you get feedback and notes. There are some fellowships that are like a week, and those are like to launch you. So like the film independent one, a week. That's to launch you. Some of the studio ones are like a week. That's to like introduce you to a bunch of executives to launch you. And then some fellowships are like year round, right? So Nichols is a year fellowship. I think Fox is like a year fellowship. So the longer ones are meant to help you develop your voice. And those one I think feel appropriate for maybe where you are right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, there are some that are like shorter but really intense.
Mhm.
So the Sundance Screenwriters Lab has an episodic those it's a little bit hybrid because you get so much press for getting into that lab. You are more on the precipice of launching just because you're in the trades. However, the residential lab at the resort is so intensive, and you have like all these meetings with the mentors that come about your voice. So there's no writing that you do on the mountain, which Sundance is moving, so I don't know if it'll be the mountain anymore, but there's no writing that you do at the lab. It's all intensive, like getting notes on the screenplay and thinking about them and doing exercises to be like to build that muscle, to build like a stronger point of view and like all of that. Then you go back to the page. And I think that kind of environment is really helpful for writers.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Awesome. Okay, are we ready for the next 20 minutes? Okay. does everybody feel? How did that feel this last 20 minutes?
feel good. I feel accomplished. I really needed this a lot because I feel like I don't really have any. I'm not really connected to any writing communities. So, hearing a lot of the things that you guys were saying, even when you were talking to Darnell about like, the number of projects that feel good to work on throughout the year, put me at ease because I'm like, well, I've been working on this one thing for like 6 months. And I'm like, well, you've come a long way. Last year you didn't write anything. So, I mean, you at least got into the end of the third act. So, just kind of putting a lot of that stuff in perspective really felt good.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Anybody else? We have about 15, 14, no, 16. Lord math.
Yeah.
16 minutes before we part ways today. So we have a little bit more time just to chat about any storytelling stuff, any career stuff, or just in general challenges we're having with the balance of being a writer and working perhaps other jobs or having other responsibilities. There's almost always something, whether it's like aging parent or a partner who just got a promotion or, adopting your nephew or whatever, there's always something that can throw us off. So I am a firm believer in having a writing practice, like you practice yoga, people practice medicine. It doesn't have to be like I have a good friend of mine. She's one of my favorite writers, and she writes every day at 4 a.m. I do not. I do not write every day at 4 a.m. But I think it's less about how often and more about how regular, even if it's a little more time. Because there's the muscle memory and getting into a creative mindset that if it's been a long time, you know how sometimes we sit down and write and then you kind of freeze and then you go to the refrigerator and then you come back and then you go to the mailbox and then you check your email and then you call I haven't called my mom in a long time. It takes a while to sort of get sometimes into that creative groove and into the emotional vulnerability it takes to do our best work, right? So it's not just about churning out something. We churn out our very best work. We can sort of like take off our pretenses, take off our like fear and anxiety about writing, take off the stress of the day, take off whatever barriers we have depending on what we're writing. If we're writing something that feels personal or is hitting a certain emotional spot, then even getting to a place where we're available enough to write whatever we need to write sometimes can take a moment of like peeling back some layers. So the more often or regular, if it's not often, that we get into a writing practice, I think the quicker we can sort of take off that armor to write our best work. So if it's every Saturday with somebody like me, or if it's um that sort of slice of time that you're sitting in the child pickup line, and then you can write like a few things, because those lines are so incredibly long and last forever. Then it has to be based on your lifestyle. Otherwise, it won't happen. Everybody has an idea of like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. That's their lifestyle. It has to be based on your lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree with the writing practice. I think that's what I'm attempting to get into, and this has really helped. I think to touch on what you just spoke about, I'm going to try. I'm going to say this as a form of accountability. I'm going to try to wake up early and write for 2 hours every day, starting on Monday, just so that when I come on Saturday, I can really hit the ground running. And yeah, I've been trying to develop that practice, and I'm good with it in other areas of my life. But yeah, I've been doing those for so long. This is something new. So I'm gonna
Okay.
try to let you know how it goes
Are you
next time.
comfortable with me bringing it up the next time I see you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll probably need that.
Okay, I will. Just okay, good. Anybody else? Thoughts, feelings, questions, frustrations?
This is good for me. Um, but I think I mentioned the term body doubling with you before, and it's basically when someone is like they're doing their thing and you're doing your own thing. It could be in person or over Zoom, and I've been trying to do this for like a really long time. Um, and I write every day, but it's not like in an organized way. I mean, I could literally just be, in the car or on the train and pull out my little app and just, write, or sometimes, like do a video of a quick idea or something of a scene. Um, it's been so difficult to like be happy with anything that I finish. It's another
Okay.
thing. Um, I've been writing forever. Like I mentioned, I've had some articles published and I've had stuff not under my name, but
Mhm.
um stuff under my name, and it felt was like, where do I go from here next? Like how do I be more consistent with my writing to get, notice, to get a rep, because I
I was just
write,
about to ask if you're
like,
rep. Okay.
I'm not, no.
Okay. Or is that something you want, or do you feel like you're not in a place in your career where you want to be sent out on meetings? Yeah, because ultimately that's their job.
Um, I've had that a couple of times, but after like all the rejection, and I know rejection is par for the course, so it's not the rejection piece, but I feel like something you said earlier about um having great samples. I feel like my samples are good, and there might even be a couple of great ones, but they're incomplete. Like
Okay.
they're on the road to greatness, but I've got to finish them. So then,
What's your rewriting process?
um, oh, it's a couple of things.
Okay.
So if I have a goal to finish a particular story by a certain time in my head, or I know a bunch of actors and actresses, and so I've had them as writing partners, so to speak. So I try to bring their vision to life sometimes. So it depends on what the deadline is. So I'll take time, go back through everything. I tried to do the sticky notes thing, that just doesn't work for me. Um, but I'll go back in my notes because I always have questions after my writing session of what I did like or what I need to fix.
Mm-hmm.
So usually after the very first time, each subsequent time, I go back and figure out which questions I want to answer. How do I make this transition better? And I'll spend time on that. It could be all day or just 30 minutes.
Oh
And I
no.
try
Okay,
to
you're
get
picking at it. Okay. Um, I have something for you. I have a rewriting beat sheet that I think is going to help you organize the rewriting process so that you're really happy with your draft. Because because if you're
that's
making
possible. Be happy with a draft.
yes, yes. But if you're making changes as you're writing it, you're not giving yourself the opportunity for something to have an identity and
Hmm.
look at, okay, this is its own separate um final art piece. Here is what is working and here is what is not working. Or not even here's what, well, that, but then also like, this is what I love and this is what I think could be more compelling. But because it's a quilt, right? You can't um touch anything without affecting other things.
Okay, yeah,
So you want to have a full quilt. Like, I love this picture, except the beard needs more definition. And in order to address the beard, I have to realize that the reason why the beard doesn't have a lot of definition is because I'm using a very similar color in the hat. So the beard doesn't stand out. So I can't just address the beard. I have to figure out now in the next, this is done. I'm putting it on ice. In the next iteration of it, do I want more distinctive colors? So I don't touch the beard or the hat. I figure out how to have the most distinctive colors. And that is how I go about the next draft. You shouldn't go into a next draft without redoing an outline because you're not starting from scratch, but you're reimagining the quilt based
Mhm.
off of the information that you know about the previous quilt.
Mhm.
So I I think you may be a little bit of a perfectionist.
I
And
feel like I try to get stuff finished, but then once it's finished, this is like the whole like project manager portion of me. Like I got to get it
yeah,
done, and then I can fix whatever's broken, right? I
yes.
can, pull out my mitigation strategies, whatever. And that's like that's the worst thing. Like I have all this finished stuff, but I feel like I just got to keep working on it.
Okay. Okay. So the
I
thing that
like
you're working on right now, can't, is it possible the script that you're working on right now for you to just put everything else in the freezer and be obsessed with one story? Is that feasible?
with effort.
I think it would be a really great exercise for you because it's hard to see your genius when it's scattered.
Mhm.
But when you're hyper focused on one thing, you can figure out where your strongest muscle is and where your weakest muscle is, and then zero in on a few things. And then when you have an approach that you love, you're like, oh, this approach works. Okay, because I do things in this order now, and this approach totally works. And then you can apply it to other things. But monotasking may be, I think, really helpful. And I have a rewrite beat sheet that's on my website. I think it's like $3.99, but I will send it to you for free if you're interested. And it just tells you the order of the rewriting process so you can turn off your brain and not make it emotional and just follow instructions. And then you get to the end of instructions, you're like, oh, I have a new draft. Look at that.
Yeah, I'm really good with process, especially
Yeah,
before me. I've just never employed that with my creative stuff.
it's tough because it is an art form. And depending on what you write, it could be close to the heart, you know? And if it is, then it's like, well, how do I become a machine about that thing? And that's just a matter of like there are different phases of it. So the development process is really methodical, right? The way that I teach it is you figure out what you want to write. So you do a word vomit, and then you create a story statement. This is a story of this character who wants this thing, right? So
Mhm.
then you do that a few times until the story statement is chef's kiss. Perfect. It's just a sentence. It's one sentence, but it's your whole story. And you use that to be the standard for all of your creative decisions so you don't get lost. And then after that story statement is your outline, which I'm sure you already have if you are like I think you are. Um, and then once you have the outline obeys the story statement. The story statement does not obey the outline. And then once you have that, then you
Mhm.
flesh out the outline until it becomes a screenplay. So as opposed to going to an outline and then a script, you have a short outline and then you flesh it out until it's a medium outline, and then you flesh it out till it's a long outline. And by the time you get to a long outline, it's already in final draft and it's your whole script. And all you do is go back and put in your dialogue so you can turn off your emotions from here to here. And then you turn them back on when you get to that long outline, when you're fleshing it out with the dialogue. And then you're done. And if you do it in that way, I think you will end up with a draft you really like because you've done all the development work over here. You don't have to make any creative decisions over here. That time is over. I'm doing a lot of moving my hands, but
We're good.
um, but there's a time to feel and there's a time not to feel. And if it gets mixed up, then I think it's hard to finish.
Yeah. Yeah, even when I'm finished, I never feel like I'm finished.
Yeah.
Y'all feel that way too? Okay.
Oh, yes.
But to me, that comes from there's something going on the story development side that's unsatisfying.
Hmm.
And that way that really compelling story that's in your head didn't end up on the page in a way that you can feel satisfied because there are elements of on the development side that's not fully fleshed out.
You really calling me out right now. Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay. Well, that was helpful. I've already decided like of a deadline. Not a
Okay.
deadline, but I'm gonna at least for the like month, like only work on one.
You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I know it feels unproductive and like it's not as efficient, but it is efficient.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I do have a paid thing I have to do for someone,
Okay.
but outside of that, because that's money. So
Right. Of course. Of course. Of course. Okay. All
Can you
right,
put
my
the
friend.
link to your site? The link so I
Yeah.
can find the beat sheet. I
Put it
definitely
in
want
the
to do
chat.
that.
Plan, film project.com. Did I spell it right? Yes. Okay. It's in the chat.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been an absolute pleasure. You guys are the most calm group of writers. Um, so it's very easy to write with you guys. You don't hold a lot of anxious energy, which anxious energy is fine. I know how to deal with it, but you guys are not like that. You're very mature.
that's good because I've been like super anxious this whole time. But
What?
yeah, but I'm on some anti-anxieties as well. So when
Okay.
I feel it, I'm like my whole inside is like, "Arr!"
Oh, well, it's not coming off that way. You guys are very, very calm. Um, well, this was an absolute pleasure. I hope to see you again. Next week, I'll be in South by Southwest, so I won't be holding a group, but then after that, it will keep going every Saturday. I hope you guys will continue the practice, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be sitting at your computer writing. It could be brainstorming, thinking, talking about it to a loved one. All of that is considered writing, including rest is considered writing, part of your writing practice. So I think you guys did a wonderful job today. I'm glad we were able to accomplish something together, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys again.